And welcome back to another episode of Casey Campbell's Videocast. I'm Casey Campbell with Great Lakes Post. And joining us right now, if you know Detroit sports, you know this man, Sean Baligian of many talents. Of course, the Lions with WJR, and also does some high school hockey coverage for state champs. Sean, how are you?
Casey, it's a pleasure to be with you, my friend. Doing very well. This was a much-needed distraction during, these crazy times with COVID-19. So it was nice to, at least have some normalcy the last couple of days and be busy with the draft.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the NFL draft, especially what the Lions did in the first few rounds. We'll start with the first pick. You look at Jeff Okudah. I mean, from the drop boards in there, it was a need that they had to have, and they got the guy when they traded Darius Slay. And
no question. No, Casey, you're right. I mean, no question about it. I think if you're one of those people that you're looking to complain, and I know that the Lions have given people many reasons to complain over the years, you're always going to find something. And like everybody else, I think you would agree with it. I would love to get some extra picks out of it. They didn't. You didn't find anybody to dance with. So at the end of the day, you took a guy that was, by everybody's account, the best cornerback, and it was a massive need for you. And the Lions made the smart play and got Jeff Okudah out of Ohio State.
The second round pick got a lot of attention. When you look at someone like DeAndre Swift, could really mix in there. God, if Kerryon Johnson just stays healthy, look at those two and what they could possibly do, Sean.
Yeah, it could be a lot of fun. You're right. I thought they'd take a running back. I didn't think it'd be there. But in fairness, DeAndre Swift, a lot of people thought DeAndre Swift deserved to be the first running back off the board. Dynamic running back that, to play devil's advocate, somebody might say, well, you know what, Bessie's only going to touch the ball 12 to 15 times a game. But I think the Lions like that versatility. I think, you've got an extra weapon for Matthew Stafford to use. I mean, I think everybody saw what happened last year. Matthew Stafford under a new offensive coordinator was really on his way to putting together a special season. So let's keep Matthew Stafford upright. Let's keep him healthy, and let's see what he might be able to do over the course of a full season. And DeAndre Swift's certainly going to help that out.
The third round pick, if you thought second round was a steal, I think this one could be with Akara. I think, man, I think he's going to be something that no one's really ever seen. I think he's going to surprise a lot of people when the season could come around and maybe challenge for one of those starting spots. What do you think?
You know what's interesting, Casey? I talked to a couple scouts about him just before we started this conversation, and they both agreed that with the point blank, they both agreed with you. This is a situation where if he wasn't injured, this is a guy that was probably going to go early second round. Some people might even see late first round. I think he fits what Matt Patricia's looking for. I think we've heard it 1,000 times, and I know you've been out at things, and I know you're going to continue to be out at things. When people talk about, are the Lions a 4-3 or the Lions a 3-4, Matt Patricia likes to say, yes. There isn't no, there's no bona fide, dignified 4-3, 3-4, anything like that. Nothing is designated, and Akora is a guy that I think you can use in a myriad of ways, much like his brother. I think Romeo kind of sets that same way. So it'll be intriguing to see how good that young man can get.
Rounds 4 through 7 today. Any picks that stood out to you there?
Yeah, it's interesting. The one pick that everybody's going to talk about is Logan Stenberg out of Kentucky. Obviously everybody heard his comments about how he plays football the right way and he thinks they're a bunch of cupcakes. That's why he's been so physical. I think both guys out of Ohio State. Jonah Jackson is a guy that I talked to a scout as soon as he was drafted. He said he's a plug-and-play guy. He's a guy that you could legitimately put in there right now. I think Cornell as well in the 7th round. That was an outstanding defensive line at Ohio State. And maybe he was overshadowed by some of the characters on that line. But one of my buddies said, I think that guy's an absolute steal in the 7th round. Now, I want to say one guy I want to bring up, but people have followed what we've talked about on the radio, on my various shows, or on the podcast we do. I love Quintez Cephas out of Wisconsin. I've been talking about this guy for a couple of months now. I said, if this guy's here in the 4th or 5th round, you grab him. Lions got him in the 5th round. It doesn't really work itself out like that all that often, but I know you watch a lot of Big Ten football. I think the kid just makes plays. He's one of those guys, if you look at the measurables, you're not going to be all that wow, but if you watch the tape and you watch what he does on field, Cephas is a stud.
Is there a position that you didn't think that the Lions addressed in this draft, or is there really anything that you saw that maybe could have been addressed?
I think a lot of people are going to wonder, okay, why didn't you go grab another backer? I think a lot of people are going to say that. As soon as the draft ended, I heard people talk about safety, but then we heard the rumors about grabbing the safety out of Notre Dame. The last time before we started talking, I haven't heard if it's official yet, but I think that would be a good pickup if you sign him as an unrestricted excuse me, a free agent
Yeah.
as well. Same thing with tight end. If they grabbed the tight end out of Washington, that's a darn good pick, because you're talking about a guy that a lot of people thought would go middle of the draft, and you end up getting him as an undrafted free agent. So, look, with all the problems on the defensive side of the ball, I understand people are going to say, did you address the defensive side of the ball enough? Lions still have some space. At last check, it was about $30 million. Now, mind you, they're going to have a chunk of that for the draft picks, but, is there a surprise? Might they sign somebody else? I guess we're going to have to stay tuned for that.
Yeah. And I think maybe could we see maybe some free agent signings? Because I mean, when you look at the defensive side of the ball, I thought there were some major problems that
Oh,
they
no
didn't
question.
that they needed to address. I don't think they did. Now they did a good job of getting those first few round picks, but
Well, you
maybe
need a
we just need
pass
to go in a
rush.
free agent.
No, you're right. You need a pass rush, and how much is Pennicini going to help? How much is Cornell going to help? I understand those questions coming out. How much is Okwara going to help out? There's no doubt about it. Look, the defense was poor last year. They didn't have a pass rush, so that's where a lot of questions are going to start. And what's tough right now, Casey, is I think what is happening is it's almost like they're asking you to take a leap of faith with what they're doing, and people
Yeah.
around here really don't want a leap of faith after watching, what transpired the last couple years.
Yeah. Overall, what would you give the Lions on this draft?
I think it was good, not great. I think that's the best way to say it. I think it's good, not great. I think that there's potential there. I understand where they were going. Even the kid out of New Mexico State, Huntley, late. At
Yeah.
worst, he's a return guy. I mean, he flies. He's a burner. So if he ends up being a bona fide return guy, is it really that bad? And it's funny, Casey, because that's kind of why, when people talk about draft grades, I mean, we won't know on these guys for 2 years. I
No.
like the idea of what they did. And if it pans out, then in 2 years from now, we might be going, oh my goodness, this was the draft class that saved Bob Quinn and everything. But you know what? I get what they were doing. I hope there's more defensively, as you just suggested, but that's a big wait and see right now.
Yeah, I mean, with Snacks obviously, not retiring, and I talked with Tony Ortiz last week. They had to take Okuda because they had to address the issue when they had to trade Darius Slay.
No
I
question.
think that was a no-brainer pick. I thought they were going to I thought Bob Quinn was going to literally drop down to 5, and I go, what are you doing? People were critical about the Okuda pick.
Yeah, that's right. I really did. I mean, I was one of those people. I thought they were going to go down to 5 or 6, but you know what? You have to give Miami credit. I think Miami sit there and played a game of chicken and said, "Well, we don't think the Lions are going to take them." So they waited. They played it right. They basically said, "Well, if Washington goes with Chase Young, like a lot of people suspected, the Lions aren't going to take a quarterback. New York's not going to take a quarterback because." So I think we can sit. We don't have to give up a big package, and we can still get our guy. And that's exactly what happened. Again, you know what? In a perfect world, I would have loved extra picks. No doubt about it. But you need to find a dance partner, and there's nobody to dance with.
Yep. Do you feel like I mean, this is the draft that Bob Quinn had to get right, because I mean, there were people that I thought he was going to be gone last year. I
Yeah.
thought everyone was going to be gone last year.
Yeah,
And
no, you're right, Casey. I think what's going to happen this year is going to be interesting. They're going to be a better team because Matthew Stafford's in there. Point blank, end of story. I think we all know that. They were 3-4-1 with an easier part of the schedule forthcoming last year. And as we talked about earlier, he was putting together a really, really fine season. To a lot of people, if they go, let's say they go 8-8 this year, which some people might say is crazy, but just for the sake of an argument, let's say they go 8-8. Well, on one hand, you could sit back and go, wow, they improved by 5 wins. But on the other hand, you could sit back and say, Yeah, but it's still not winning. You made that move a couple of years ago when the Lions were 9-7 and missed the playoffs. And if you go 8-8 and miss the playoffs 3 years later, well, are you really progressing? And so those are the kind of conversations that we're going to have, I think, by the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean that's the conversation I think we do need to have. And then where's this team going to go now? Because you have Matt Patricia in there. I feel like this team has to win and has to win now. And I just don't see ownership really putting the pressure on them.
Yeah, it's open ended. I mean, really, at the end of the year, is ownership going to come out and say, "Well, we wanted them to compete, and they competed. Golly gee, they were in it to the end." I don't know. I mean, I don't know the answer to that. I don't think anybody knows the answer to that.
No.
If I had to venture a guess, that's my guess. I think if they went 8-8, I think that ownership would come out and say, well, you know what? We took a big step forward. It looks like we're building towards something. Let's see what 2021 holds. And I don't know how well that would sit with some fans out there. But if I were a betting man, I think it's going to be something along those lines.
Yeah. I mean, that's literally what it is. I mean, the plan this season is really going to go on how this, I mean, it's really going to depend on the draft class and what they do in free agency and basically how much workout time, how much training camp are they going to get? Is it going to be safe to go out there for training camp? Because you have to get all those issues in there.
You're right. And Casey, again, this is going to be another year where I think you're going to hear a lot about the culture. And it was funny because out at training camp last year, it started to die down a little bit. It seemed like everybody was happy. I've made the joke, camp happy times. I think everybody kind of accepted that Matt Patricia, this was his show now. I think Matt Patricia would probably be the first guy to admit that he even dialed it down a little bit and delegated a little bit more. And while he still jumped on people, that's his style, I don't think he did it as much last year. So I think it was interesting. A lot of those questions about the culture and how well is he liked, et cetera, I didn't hear them during training camp. I didn't hear them during an exhibition. When the losing starts, that's when it starts to creep back in. So, you heard a lot of that, maybe after the first few weeks of the season.
And I think you might hear less of that now that Darius Slay is gone.
Yeah.
And I talked to Tony about this last week. Tony about this a couple of days ago. Basically, he wants all football men. He wants people that live, breathe, die football. And the thing is, I've seen Darius. I mean, I saw Darius at Brighton High School at a Brighton Howell basketball game. I mean, that's the kind of things that he does.
Darius is a great guy. I think we all know that. And he wanted to be part of this community and he immersed himself in this community. But it got to a point where, listen, sometimes it's just best to move on. That's the way it is. And I think Darius would say that. Yeah. I can tell you this much. He was one of the easiest guys to deal with, to chat with. He was forthcoming. But I think there was a personality friction type of thing between he and Matt Patricia. And, I think Darius went out of his way to talk about some of those issues very early on. And as he said, there was a bridge it destroyed that never got rebuilt. And so unfortunately you have to move on. But, he's the type of guy I'm always going to root for him, man. I like Darius Slay. He was always really super cool to me, and it was just time to go. And sometimes that happens in the world of sports.
Yeah. Basically, this was a draft that usually was we got to see Roger Goodell's basement, or maybe it was a set that was built for him or something. But it's a draft that probably I don't know, may happen again. I'm not sure. But it was
unique. It was unique. I don't know about you. I kind of liked some of the behind the scenes stuff and sitting in the living room of some of these players. It was really cool that those players gave the access and everything. They were planning a big party this year, obviously out in Vegas, and we'll get back to that. But I'll tell you this much: this will be a draft we'll always remember. I mean, these are strange times, and that's certainly not to make light of what's going on. The seriousness of COVID-19 is real, but if we can for a second to have that distraction, we're going to remember this draft forever.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, it was a good draft. And I think for the most part, I think the Lions really did some things and addressed some needs. Obviously they didn't address all the needs, but they addressed most of the needs that they had. And
I agree.
that's what you can ask for.
No, I agree with you. And, let's see what they do in free agency. Let's see what they do with the undrafted free agents. I think there's still some work to be done. I don't think there's a miracle cure for this team. I really don't. And what I mean by that, Casey, is I don't think that this team is going to ride that NFL elevator. I've used the term NFL elevator for years. And, it seems like there are those teams like the Vikings are an example that maybe they're on floor 7 wins, and then they jump to 11 and back to 9. I don't think this is a Lion team that's going to go up to floor 10 wins or 11 wins or anything like that. But are they better than 3-12-1? Absolutely. I think they're nearer to that mediocre land of 7-9, 8-8. I hope I'm wrong. I'd love it if for once the Lions surprise us, right? It's usually a case where we're talking at the end of the season. I thought they'd go 8-8 and they went 6-10 or something like that. Wouldn't it be great if they surprised us and bumped it up a couple games? We'll see.
Yeah, means yeah. 6, 7, 8 wins. That's what I think. That's what the benchmark is, and that's what I always predict every year.
Yeah.
You really don't pick. The lowest is 3, but the highest you go is maybe 8 or 9. They haven't really got to that 10, 11. Maybe a few years ago they did, but not to the 10, 11 things that they got up there when Jim Schwartz or Jim Caldwell was there. Matt Patricia hasn't proven that yet. And I don't think he will.
Yeah, I have my questions. There's no doubt about that. I think Matt Patricia would be the first guy to sit back and say, well, I can understand why people have questions. That's why I'm going to be interested this year to see, a full year with Matthew and the new coordinator. By all accounts, and we saw it last year, they fit like hand in glove, and we'll see if they can exceed expectations this year.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Anyway, good talk. Always good talking with you, Sean.
Thank you.
We'll
hit me up
at the see you maybe out with the Lions or maybe at a high school hockey game or something.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure talking to you, bud.
All right.